Hello everyone, my name is Brandon Job, and today I'm here with the Coles sports anchor on 98.5 Sports Sub, Zolak and Bertrand Show. Please welcome Tim McKone.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yep, nice to be with you here today. And I know obviously the troop from Boston just coming from the show today, talking about a lot about the sports going on right now because Patriots are doing well.
I know it's a great time to be in the sports business here in New England, certainly with the Patriots playing the way that they're playing, no question about it.
And how was your Thanksgiving recently? Now it just passed.
Thanksgiving was great. Nothing to complain about. Like I said, Patriots playing well too. Drake May looking like an MVP candidate, so we're all excited right now, gearing up for a playoff run, hopefully.
Okay, let's dive right in. So growing up in Worcester, talk about that.
Yeah, I grew up in Worcester, Mass. Worcester through and through, and so grew up loving sports. Found out pretty quickly after high school. Wasn't actually good at sports, but loved talking about sports, right? And so that's how I think you wind up in a field like this, where this was certainly really something I'm passionate about. Wanted to continue to sort of build on that, and that's how I was lucky enough to kind of find my way into this career.
Okay, what sports did you play growing up?
So played football, basketball, baseball.
So basically everything.
Through high school. Went to Roger Williams. Was hoping to play basketball there. Realized during the first team lift I couldn't bench 135 pounds.
Wow.
That was probably an issue, right?
Exactly.
Moving forward,
Yep.
right? So again, quickly pivoted and found my way sort of into sports broadcasting and it fell in love with it and have been lucky enough to be doing it ever since.
Did your parents play any sports or no?
No, parents didn't play sports, and again, it was just something I fell into. Grandparents were big-time sports fans,
Okay.
big-time basketball fans. UConn basketball, they're from Connecticut, so that sort of was my first love in terms of watching sports, and then obviously growing up in the New England area, whether it's Celtics, Patriots, Red Sox, all that stuff kind of coming together.
Okay. Going to college, you said you were trying to play basketball. That didn't,
Didn't
work out.
No,
I know, yeah.
It's good
Didn't work out the way
Fair
you were
to say,
playing.
yeah.
What did you study though in college?
So I was a communications major and an education major,
Okay.
right? So I was a double major. The education part, certainly something that I enjoyed doing, but was more of a backup in case the communication stuff didn't work out because I didn't know what direction it was going to. But started doing some internships in college, a small radio station in Worcester, WTAG, and then some TV stuff as well in Providence where I interned at NBC 10 in Providence.
Yep.
And so really kind of fell in love with the craft, both the radio station and the TV side of things, and that's when I realized that was definitely something that I kind of wanted to pursue and took that angle versus getting into education.
Okay, so getting into now, because you said you interned at NBC, what was some advice that you got as you're now starting to become or get into the broadcasting space?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the big things coming out after graduating college was that the internships and some of the relationships that I built at those places kind of allowed me to get my foot in the door at those jobs. So my first job out of school was at that radio station that I interned at, right? And so at WTAG, when I first graduated from school, I was doing intermission reports for the Worcester Sharks, which was the AHL team at the time in Worcester, and I was doing halftime reports for Holy Cross football. Now the Worcester Sharks moved about a year after I did those did those intermission reports, which tells you how exciting my intermission reports were. That they were like, we're going to move this team across the country and get as far away from Tim McKone as we possibly can. But it was a great opportunity, honestly, for a kid that didn't really have a ton of experience at the time. To kind of get my feet wet in an environment where I had a lot of leeway to kind of learn and grow and get that experience. And so that sort of allowed me, again, to sort of build my career and get my foot in the door.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because you mentioned NBC. In working there or interning there, like you said, I saw that were you also a newscaster?
Yeah, so I interned at NBC 10 and got that job at WTAG and then also worked as a reporter at a TV station in Worcester, Charter TV3 at the time. It's now Spectrum News 1. And so left WTAG to become a reporter at Spectrum News 1 because when I interned doing radio and doing television, honestly, I loved both paths at the time. So I didn't really have a preference at that point.
Just exploring anything.
In terms of what I wanted to do. So got an opportunity at Channel 3 in Worcester. And then from there, again, talking about relationships that you built in terms of interning, interned for Frank Carpano in Providence, who's a Rhode Island legend, has been doing it for over 30 years, maybe even 40. Don't yell at me, Frank, if I got that wrong. He gave me a call when there was an opening there and took a job as a sports anchor down in Providence and was there for 5 years. And that was a job that I absolutely loved because you got sort of the best of both worlds as a sports fan for me. I love all the New England teams, but I also love college basketball.
Yes.
And when you have Providence College, when you have URI, you're talking about Big East basketball, A-10 basketball. Bryant was really good. Brown certainly is in the Ivy League. Those were teams that we focused on as well. So loved my time in Providence. Spent 5 years there.
And I love how you say that too, because like the smaller states, Providence, Connecticut, like they're New England, so they have, Celtics fans, Patriots, but they also really love their college sports as well too.
Yeah, in the hyper local stuff as well. Some of the high school stuff. You got to go out. We did a football show every week, which was fun. You got to go out in the community, and again, sort of build your skills, right? Which I think is important too if you're getting in this business, to be able to do radio, do television, shoot your own stuff, edit your own stuff. To have as many skill sets as you possibly can, I think also opens the door for you. And being able to get that job in Providence, again, allowed me to grow on a lot of different levels that helped me long term.
And just being open-minded, like you said.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Now, you said 5 years at NBC in Providence, correct? So how do we make that transition now to get to Boston?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to get my foot in the door at 98.5, over 10 years ago at this point. And a lot of that stuff was just doing weekend things there, doing halftime and postgame for the Celtics, doing intermissions for the Bruins, and doing some fill-in stuff certainly in the holidays and the summer. If you listen to the 98.5 on July 4th, which not many people are listening to on July 4th, right? Or if you're listening to it on Christmas Day, that was me for a really long time, having that opportunity to fill in when the main guys were on vacation. And so did that for a while. And then ultimately a spot on Zolak and Bertrand opened up a couple of years ago, and was lucky enough that I meshed well with those guys and everyone at the station, and certainly Zoe and Beetle gave me an opportunity to sort of take that next step and join the show, and it's been a really fun experience so far.
And growing up watching these teams, how was that, just being able to be Bruins games, Celtics games, like how was that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was one of those things too, where even at NBC going into the Patriots locker room as an intern for the first time, you kind of have to pinch yourself going, I can't believe I'm in here
kind of like a surreal moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a really cool opportunity for a kid that, like you said, you grow up watching Tom Brady win Super Bowls, and then you're asking Tom Brady a question post-game about, how he played. It took certainly some getting used to and a transition, and it's been really fun and a great experience.
Okay. Was there any cool interview that you got to do with any of the sports, like whether the Celtics players, Bruins players, while you were, I want to say, not yet on radio, but when you were just interning?
Yeah, absolutely,
on NBC?
Absolutely. So when I was first at Channel 3 in Worcester, Brad Stevens was hired by the Boston Celtics.
Okay, so around 2015, right?
Yeah, so somewhere in there. And they gave us an opportunity to come down, and I got to do a one-on-one with Brad Stevens, right, which was an unbelievable experience for a young reporter. Had never really had an interview with a professional, whether it's a coach or a player at that point, right?
Yes.
So I had done certainly some stuff with, like I said, the Worcester Sharks, a bunch of high school sports, but this is Brad Stevens, the next head coach of the Boston Celtics. Now,
and even not to cut you off too, this was a big moment because right then, that's when they were getting rid of Big Three, Doc Rivers was leaving, all that too.
Brad Stevens had just been to a couple of national championship games as a Butler head coach too, so as someone that loved college basketball, I'm like, this is a big time opportunity. Now, again, worked for a smaller station, so I'm one-man banding, and so I know you know what that means, but for people that don't, that means that you're going to be shooting your own stuff, right? You're the guy that's actually filming everything. You're going to be the guy that's going back and editing that stuff, asking the questions, sort of doing everything. And so I get to the Celtics practice facility at the time, and NBC Sports Boston has this beautiful set. All the Boston stations have a bunch of different cameras there. I'm drenched in sweat because I'm coming in, lugging the camera by myself. I set everything up, and Brad sits down, and I interview him for 5 minutes, and I look over at the camera, and the camera is blinking, and I forgot to put a tape in. I didn't bring a tape. I spent all night preparing for this interview, and the one thing I forgot to do was put a tape in the camera that I was bringing. I didn't film any of it.
Oh, my
I
goodness.
sat there, and I was too embarrassed to tell him, so I kept interviewing him for a couple minutes afterwards,
To get
knowing
any
full
last minute,
well
fully.
that there was nothing that was happening with that video camera, and I got out, and I was the most embarrassed person in the world. I had to call my boss and tell him, hey, that big one-on-one that I had with Brad Stevens, I didn't get any of it. And he laughed. It was a huge learning moment for me, really embarrassing. I never forgot a tape or to double check what I was doing afterwards after doing that. So it was certainly a learning moment. A story I can look back on and laugh at now, but you have never seen someone sweat more than I was sweating during that interview, more embarrassed than I was. I was probably red in the face. I'm sure Brad Stevens was going, what is wrong with this guy right now? Why is he freaking out the way that he is? But that was my first opportunity. I thought that was a really funny story. But again, as a young reporter, and I think when you first start on this, you are going to screw up. You're going to make mistakes, right? Yes. Maybe not forgetting a tape when you're interviewing the head coach of the Boston Celtics. A lot of people hope that that's not what they're going to do.
I know.
But that's a funny story that I kind of lean on and certainly tell interns that we have, even now at 98.5, that you're going to make mistakes. It's a learning process. Continue to grow. Continue to get some experience under your belt, and you're going to. Everything's going to work out. You're going to be all right.
Okay. Now, because you worked on the camera, behind the camera, on the radio.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is either the biggest difference or maybe the biggest thing you learn now in taking those skills that you learned for now being on the radio?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you learn that the two mediums are very different, right? And especially the audiences that you're dealing with as well, right? So when I'm on NBC 10, doing the sportscast, first of all, we get 3 minutes for sports during the week, right? Which is, it's over before you know it. And you also have to realize that you're not necessarily talking to just diehard sports fans. You're also talking to your 85-year-old grandmother that doesn't know anything about sports, right? So you have to keep a lot of it and some of it very surface level when it comes to what you're discussing, or really sort of the main topics. When you're talking about radio and 98.5, the Sports Hub, a lot of our audience is really, really smart when it comes to what's going on with these teams, and they want to do sort of deep dives, and you're getting 15 minutes a segment to discuss that stuff. So you really get into sort of the nitty-gritty when you're talking about these teams versus when I'm doing a package, let's say at NBC 10, and I'm trying to tell the story about the week with the New England Patriots, I'm getting maybe a minute 15 at most.
Okay.
Right? So you got to kind of have to be quick, concise, maybe a couple sound bites here and there, and that's it. And I think that's sort of the biggest difference when you talk about television and radio is just how much content that you have to really do a deep dive in when we're talking about radio versus television.
Okay. And even on radio now, like, okay, because we're in an era now where you see there's a lot of people on social media and cell phones, cellular devices, whatever it may be. I asked this question a few times, but this is different because you're on radio now.
Yeah.
And I'm usually asking this to people that are on cable TV, like the Josh Brigadiers I told you about, Steve Burton. What is the biggest thing you particularly do as a co-host or host, obviously, whatever it may be, to get the engagement? Because it's not only that they're not even watching you now, but they're listening.
Yeah, no question. They're listening, and I think that's sort of one of the things that, especially, right now during football season, for instance, and the Patriots are playing really well, I think there's just a lot of excitement around that team, so it can be a lot easier. But when we're talking about sort of the summer months, when maybe it's a little bit slower, I think that's where sort of your preparation in terms of what you're doing as a host really comes into play, right? Because you want to try to find maybe some different angles that people haven't thought of or really explored yet that kind of engage your listener, or in our case too, because we're simulcast as well, a viewer too. So yeah, we're going to talk about the NFL draft a lot, but now day 20 of the NFL draft, you can't say the same thing that you said 19 days ago. So what is it that you're going to bring to the table today that's going to be engaging for that listener? And I think that's sort of the challenge that you might have on radio, is finding those angles. And that, again, just goes back to preparation, reading as much as you possibly can, doing some research, trying to think of an angle maybe that people haven't explored yet. And you do that, and you kind of find your way in terms of what you're doing.
And not only that, I feel like that fits especially perfect with you because you've seen it all. So you know the preparation that goes into whether it's on camera, off camera, on the radio too.
Yeah, and so there's certainly a rhythm when we talk about sort of the sports calendar that you can kind of fall into. As soon as you get into training camp, there's going to be some stories. There's going to be some excitement building. What storylines are you looking out for? Well, this year it was, Mike Vrabel's now the head coach of the New England Patriots. What do practices look like? Because we're down there on a daily basis as the midday show at 98.5 watching those practices. So does it feel different than it did when Gerard Mayo was the head coach a year ago? How does Drake May look in year 2 right now versus how he did as a rookie? Has he taken that leap? How do some of those rookies that they brought in look? How do some of those free agents look? Stephon Diggs coming off that knee injury. Is he practicing? Does he look like he could be an effective piece as well? So there's a lot of different angles that you can take on a day in and day out basis. The idea, though, is that you keep it fresh, keep it exciting, and keeping people kind of hooked in terms of what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And especially getting to go down there to see them. How does that feel to get to see some of the players?
No, it's an awesome experience, and it's something that certainly I don't take for granted at any point. I don't take for granted the opportunity that 98.5 has given me in terms of being able to work with two guys that are really, really, really talented as well. So, I can't thank the Sports Hub enough for what they've given me, and certainly, nothing that you're going to take for granted when you're sitting there, watching the Patriots, like you said, practice. And that's your job. It's pretty cool. It's tough to beat.
You mentioned about preparation, and coming from a sports person like yourself, obviously it didn't pan out the way you wanted to. But we know when it comes to sports, the practicing, like mastering your craft. And you mentioned preparation as well. I see that competitiveness in you as well too. What does that mean to you, just knowing that, okay, even though in the sports itself, but I use that preparation, practice, and the work that I do to put out the best content I can.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the goal, right? And I think for younger broadcasters as well, the biggest piece of advice that I can possibly give to them is get as many reps as you possibly can doing it, right?
Exactly.
And so, for me as an intern, being able to intern in Rhode Island gave me an opportunity to kind of do some more things than maybe you would in a bigger market like Boston, right? And so getting that hands-on experience in Worcester as well was a really cool opportunity, and then being at those stations in Worcester, and again getting that hands-on experience at a smaller station where I'm not just on the air for the Worcester Sharks, but I'm also running the board for that game as well, and getting sort of a feel for what that's like is invaluable experience. And I just think the more as a young broadcaster you can do, and the more experience you can get under your belt, is going to be really beneficial. And the exciting thing right now, I think for young broadcasters too, is, I don't think I'm very old. I'm getting older, but we didn't have really podcasts as something that you could do at the time. So my first real experience behind the mic was that first job in Worcester, right? A couple opportunities I got as an intern as well. Now, as a college student, you can do your own podcast. Mm-hmm. You can do a show like this, which is again an unbelievable experience, and an experience that I would absolutely kill for at the time. I didn't have that. And so if you can find those experiences before you even really get your career started, man, you have such a leg up on the competition, it's not even funny.
Exactly. And especially with us just talking about sports, speak on the importance when it comes to kids as a whole, just playing sports. Why do you feel like that's so important, especially for kids?
Yeah, I just think that the opportunity to not only build relationships, and especially in this field, relationships it's such a big part of it, right? And building relationships not only with people maybe that you might get to know with some of the teams that you're covering, but just coworkers as well. It's a fast-paced business as well, so there's always something happening, and working as sort of a team, whether it's on radio or TV, is a big part of that. And I think the experience that you get playing sports growing up sort of prepares you not only in terms of building relationships, but also working together as a team in adverse situations as well, and being able to kind of handle that. And it's something that you can certainly carry with you, and I think is super beneficial in this business.
And I also agree to that as well. For me too, even like we said, both didn't pan out how we wanted it.
Yes.
But that team aspect, especially for me and you playing sports, whether it's here at Access Framing or you at 98.5.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with that.
And luckily, benching, more than 135 pounds has not been an issue for me in this field as well. So that's worked out too.
Okay. So obviously, gotta touch on current sports. I will say this: what parade do you think we're going to get in Boston first?
It's a great question. If Jason Tatum comes back, certainly there's some tough competition out west. I do like the Celtics' chances in the Eastern Conference, and they've surprised me. I did not think that they were going to play to the level that they have so far this year. I thought this was going to be a real big step back for Boston, and it hasn't panned out that way. I think Joe Mazzulla has done a great job. But if I had to pick one, I think the path is open right now for the New England Patriots to potentially. And people thought I was crazy that they were going to win. I said they were going to win 11 games this year. We're way past that, and now I think that a Super Bowl trip and a potential Super Bowl is absolutely on the table, and a big part of that is their second-year quarterback in Drake May.
Surprises also too, the Bruins. Yeah. I didn't think they would actually be where they are right now.
I'm right there with you too. Both of those teams thought it was going to be a tough winter for both of those organizations, the Bruins and the Celtics. And again, that's just showing that you don't have to know everything to be somewhat successful in this business, because I got both of those completely wrong. Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely agree with you as well. And before I get you out of here, what does Boston sports as a whole mean to you? Especially working in Boston sports, growing up in Worcester, what does Boston sports mean to you?
Yeah, I just think I'm passionate about the teams, and I think it's one of the things from being around here that's also led to sort of my career path as well, because I know how important it is, not just to me, but to a lot of people that grow up in this area, right? I think this is a really interesting region when it comes to sports, because I do think it just kind of matters more to a lot of people here than it does in other parts of the country. And if you're from here and you kind of grow up in that, you sort of understand that in a way that I think a lot of people that aren't necessarily from around this part of the country fully grasp. And so it certainly meant a lot to me growing up. I was certainly passionate about it enough to try to get into this as a career, and I've been lucky enough to build on that. So no, you'll never have me saying a bad thing about, not only the sports teams around here and the passion that the fan bases have, but also the passion that the fans that listen to us have about these teams as well.
And just holding like all of our teams accountable too, because trust me, I agree with you. I am a Boston sports fan to the core.
Yeah.
So like if we're having just a bad season, bad game, I'm furious.
But I think that's what's also driven some of the success, right?
Exactly.
Is that the fan bases hold these organizations accountable, and you can't get away with being on the bottom of the standings for very long, right? And it's just not acceptable around this region. That's it, no matter what fan base you're talking about with some of these sports teams. And I think that's why you've seen sort of the sustained success for an extended period of time right now in Boston. Sure, one or two teams might be down, but pretty consistently you can look at this over the last 25 years and say there is always at least one team that is vying for a championship. And I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon.
And I definitely agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, hey, I just want to thank you again for coming into Access Premium and talking about your career in the sport broadcasting industry.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.